only doing two types of financial problems. Either the problem will say that it is a savings problem or that it is a loan problem where you're paying off a loan. So if it's a savings problem, then you have one set of options. If it is a loan problem, then you have another set of options. So you're either going to go this way or you're going to go this way, and you can tell by reading the problem whether it's savings or whether it's a loan problem. And then we have three different functions. There's a ton of financial functions in Excel, but we only look at three. We look at the payment to find out what your payment's going to be on a loan or what your payment is going to be to reach a savings goal. We have present value and future value. So if they are asking in a savings problem, about your goal, about reaching a goal, then that is going to be trying to determine how much you're going to have at some point in the future. Okay, so you use the future value function. In a loan problem, if you're paying off a loan, the future value is always going to be 0. Okay, so we won't even use the future value function if we are working on a loan problem. The other options are if they ask you how much you need to save every time, then that is going to be a payment. How much do you have to save or to pay the bank every month in order to reach a goal? If you're paying off a loan, then that's also going to be the payment function. Okay, the payment is always going to be negative, so make sure you put a minus sign in front of it when you're adding the arguments. And the other function is present value, and that is how much money you have right now. If you're borrowing money, the present value is the loan amount. Okay, and if you are saving money, the present value is the amount that you have saved so far. Okay. And there is one other thing you need to keep in mind when you're doing all this. The payment is always going to be negative, regardless of whether it's a savings problem or whether it's a loan problem. But the present value in a savings is always going to be a negative number as well, because that's basically like payments that you have already made before we started the calculation. When you're doing a loan problem and you have to fill in the present value, not when you're doing the function, but when you're doing one of these other two functions here and you're putting in the present value, that's always going to be a positive number. Okay. The other thing you need to remember all the time is that to calculate your rate, we're always going to take the annual rate and we're divided by the number of periods, which is usually 12, and that is true regardless of whether it's a savings problem or a loan problem. When you're computing the number of periods, actually instead of putting 12 down here, I should put in number of periods. Okay, and the number of periods is always going to be the number of years, which is usually what's given, multiplied by the periods per year, or the payments per year. Okay, you never ever use the annual rate as one of the arguments in the function. And when you're calculating the number of periods, when you have to enter that in as one of the arguments, don't put in years, put in the number of periods, which is going to be years times the periods per year. There is a place, if you use the template, there is a place on the template for you to enter the annual rate. There's a place for you to enter the number of years. So these two numbers will get entered. You do not use those though. There is a built-in calculation in every one of the templates that takes the number of years and multiplies it by periods per year. That's the number that you have to use. And there is also a calculation in there that takes the annual rate and divides it by the number of periods per year. And that is what you have to use. Do not use, the most common mistake is people use the annual rate or they use the number of years. And you must use the rate per period. You must use the number of periods. Okay, so keep those in mind when you're trying to figure out how to do the financial problems.